the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And our sincerest apologies to the folks on YouTube. I thought I had hit all the buttons. I thought I had hit all of the things. And we did not have sound for the first segment. So, with that, I apologize and tell you that if you want to check out First and 10, I think it was really good. You can rewind in the free Odyssey app and listen to it, or the video will be up as soon as I can edit it in commercial breaks and throw it up on our YouTube page at the Team 980 and on mine at Craig Hoffman. So once that is there, for those of you on the YouTube stream, I'll also throw a link in the chat on YouTube. And then Anthony, Sean Moore in the YouTube chat did ask the all-important question, who gets fined for that? I kind of think this is going to be a mutual. I think we're both going to get fined. Oh, Anthony's got to get all TV ready there. Yeah, turn your light on, plug your headphones in. Let's go. The show started 33 minutes ago. What are we doing over there? Honestly, that might be a 5-point fine for you for just being late on everything. I know you got stuff going on, bro, but what are we doing?
I couldn't see myself, so I didn't know how I looked. This is my first time. Well, technically, it's my second time. I made a quick
brief appearance. Yeah, you did. All right, I'll ignore that 5-point fine. There's a little flinch that the ref didn't see.
Yeah.
I think you're technically supposed to check the sound, although you got a lot going on, and I think we're just going to make that more of a hard, steadfast rule that you got to do that. I also is the one who set it up. That's a Craig issue. So I think that's a 5 for you and a 10 for me. I think that's how we're going to do that. Is that fair? All right.
I tried to ask before the show whether
you did ask, but the problem is, like, once I start talking where I'm no longer able to, like, look at things because I have to be a radio host, not an engineer.
Yeah.
That's when I need you to check it.
Gotcha.
All right, so that's 40 for you, but that is still, ultimately, it's my responsibility to do it since I'm the one, doing it. That's now up to 55 points for me.
Whoa, we're 5
off. Yeah, 40 plus 55 is 95. And I think we should have a goal of not getting to lunch payment by the end of the week. Can we avoid a fine for the rest of the week? Honestly, the way we're going today, I don't know that we're going to do it by the rest of the show. But there you go. That's where we're at. Damn. All right, Anthony, do you have the breaking news sounder by any chance? Because speaking of things that we don't have expedient access to.
Your breaking news.
Yeah, my ability to hit a computer that doesn't exist right now is impeding my ability to have the breaking news sounder. Because we have, it appears, via Adam Schefter, which is weird because it looks like an official release and I don't see it anywhere else yet. But it does appear that we have the Commanders roster moves. I just haven't gotten the same email that it looks like Adam Schefter got, which is kind of annoying, if I'm being completely honest. Nope, nothing. Looks like Adam's email's faster than mine, or he got a leaked edition.
I have a breaking news sounder, but I don't have yours.
Okay, what's your breaking news sounder? Yeah, people get the point. All right, the first list of Commanders cuts go like this. Most of these we know, but there's one I'm going to get to at the end, so I'll quickly get to that. That is significant and interesting. Not a full cut, but a guy developed an injury all of a sudden. Zion Bowens, receiver Milo Eifler, I think is interesting and a big practice squad candidate. Cornerback DeMarcus Fields, linebacker Farrod Gardner, safety Joshua Kalu, wide receiver Marcus Kemp was the first guy to go this morning. An interesting guy that potentially, I think, if he doesn't get picked up anywhere, I would consider using one of my practice squad spots on him potentially as like a guy that I want as a dude who's played in the league. I think is interesting as a potential practice squad guy for sure. Guard tackle. Jared Patterson, I know he's a local kid. He's a fan favorite. And by the way, he's a good running back. The problem is he's only a good running back. And with no special teams ability is not good enough to be a fourth guy at what can easily be a three-position group. And that's ultimately why Jaret Patterson is the first to go. I think the guy that's in more interesting consideration is Jonathan Williams because he does play special teams. And those two are pretty even as backs. They're guys that can average you 4 yards a carry behind a good offensive line in the NFL. But those guys, unfortunately, are a dime a dozen, and Patterson gets cut. Joshua Pryor, defensive end, just never really flashed in camp. And then cornerback DJ Sturgis. Anthony, the guy that's super interesting, they placed Braden Daniels, their fourth-round pick, on injured reserve. So Braden Daniels was in line for essentially a redshirt year. I think that's a guy that was overdrafted based off the consensus, but has a lot of upside and potential, super athletic ability, and to his credit and to the staff's credit, got a lot better and consistently played better over the course of the summer. First couple weeks of camp were pretty rough. Then he just continued to fight and battle and get better. And something else that I think is to his credit in the long term, he was better in games than he was practice. And sure, it helps to not go against that defensive line because they are deep. We've been talking about, and we will continue to talk about, how they might keep 11 defensive linemen, right? So if that's the case, and you're a rookie figuring it out, and you're stuck playing with the twos maybe, and you're going against F.A. Obata, like, that sucks. That's not going to be a good time. You go against some other team, you go against Cincinnati, and you go against their two or their three, and it's not that bad. So he's consistently been better in the games than he has in practices. But this is the kind of thing that happens. A team picks up a guy just, his hamstring's sore. Got to put him on IR. Because they know realistically, if he is active for a game, things have gone wrong. And there's probably better veteran options out there if you get in that type of mind. And if we're being realistic, guys like Trent Scott already in the building are probably better options than Braden Daniels at this time. A year from now, different story. 2 years from now, very different story if he continues to develop. But right now, red shirt, okay, cool. He's on IR. He'll be in all the meetings if they're smart, and he'll be in your camp next year. But hey, man, you don't got to worry about practicing. You don't got to worry about anything this year. You are here to learn and get better, and we'll work with you to the extent that we're allowed to when you're on IR, which isn't much, but he's not going to help you this year. So what you do is you find a way to keep him for the long term, create a roster spot, and that's exactly what they just did. So, and they do it now, which I believe ends his season. The difference being, I think what you're going to see with a guy like Phil Mathis potentially is he makes the initial 53, then he's allowed to go on short-term IR, and you can bring him back in the season. You put a guy on IR now, he's done for the year. He's gone. So Braden Daniels, rookie season, not going to happen. Pretty fascinating to me that is the case. Every other thing that happened on those cuts, not that interesting. Patterson, notable. Everything else, I think, Anthony, not that interesting. Anything to catch your eye, though, that I may have missed?
No, I mean, I didn't know that, Braden going on the IR or I guess the injured list before the season means he can't come back. That is a shocking development, but it's also very much understandable, like you said. Marcus Kemp, we see on here. I'm upset for the guy. They brought him over from Kansas City. He was making a couple of splash plays. It's just that wide receiver room is just like too deep, to be honest. Didn't really have the special team, I guess, impact that I guess some of the other receivers could have had. So it sucks to see him go, but also Jaret Patterson as well. So
yeah,
all these other guys, I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and apparently the Daniels thing was not necessarily a phantom injury. So I take that back. According to John Keim, he is a torn rotator cuff. So that's a real one. I mean, depending on the severity of the tear, that could have been a few week injury, but it also could mean that he's out would be out for the year no matter what. But definitely not worth keeping on your initial 53. Where you're gonna have to work him back, whatever. So yeah, that's the news. Braden Daniels, torn rotator cuff, out for the season. So his rookie season over before it ever begins. But what does that mean for the roster projection? It means that the Take Command roster projection you hear in 17 minutes is going to be perhaps a little bit dated. Or, Anthony, actually, here's what we could do. We could just play the defense. If you want the offensive Take Command, then you can go to the actual podcast.
Yeah.
And you'll know if you're having that idea right now that there's going to be a Braden Daniels on the roster and there's nothing we could do about it because when we recorded it this morning, we didn't know we had a torn rotator cuff. The defense, though, that is still held up in our projection, so I guess we'll play that for you coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Up next, though, what else happened this weekend? Then back to the Commanders at 5 here on The Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. Appreciate the gaggle of folks there who stuck around through our early audio issues. And coming up in just a little bit, we will post up First and 10 on YouTube for those that missed it. So First and 10 going to be coming up on YouTube at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman, probably a little bit after the top of the hour. Here on the radio, live at the top of the hour, Not My Beat. So you will get a roster projection there. Pick six at 6 coming up a little bit later as well. We look back at our 6 players who we looked at on Friday, highlighted as interesting guys to watch and evaluate how they did in the game against Cincinnati, and then our own live roster projection at 6:15. We'll do the offense first, defense at 6:30. And Anthony, I'm glad that we kind of have today's cuts now, which I think is great for us to be able to do that roster projection later, because like the Braden Daniels thing changes everything. And so when Logan and I did it this morning, I was like, I guess I'll just do this again later with Anthony, and it's probably going to be most of the same information, but we actually have like a new piece of news, and the trickle down for that is significant. So I'm excited to do that again a little bit later in the show. Right now, though, time for our weekend review. We just asked the question, hey, what else happened this weekend? Of course, the Commanders always get the headlines, but plenty of other things going on this weekend. DC sports-wise, you have one soccer team going in one direction and one soccer team definitively going in the other. DC United is a mess right now. An absolute unmitigated poop disaster, Anthony. Their captain went over. So, like, after a game, win or lose, you go over to the supporter section and you say, hey, thanks for coming. We appreciate you. Got greeted with not our captain chants. It's bad. Stephen Goff had some incredible stat about their goal production in the last 5 games. It's brutal, man. DC United's in a bad way, and it does not seem that, unlike some other times where they've struggled and you're like, yeah, no, I get it. There's a way out of this, and we see the path. DC United, not doing so great. Washington Spirit, they got to play a lineup they have not played in a long time this weekend. Trinity Rodman, Andy Sullivan back from the World Cup. Rounding out Ashley Sanchez and Aubrey Kingsbury, who rejoined the team last week. Ule Sarr, their new international signing from France, also in the mix for them, and they looked good. They played Portland, the best team in the league, and drew 1-1. Really sad news from this game. Still waiting to hear on what actually happened, but Sophia Smith, perhaps the best player in the league, former MVP, scored in the championship game that was played here last year, went down with a knee injury. That sucked. It happened right in front of us, too. Just banged her knee on the ground, and Soph was in tears. And, hopefully it's just more fear than it is some kind of long-term injury with the Paris Olympics just a year away. And obviously Portland looking to regain or defend their title. But a very, very good performance by Washington. Just couldn't put home a couple of chances. But I think the better team over the course of the 90 minutes. Excellent performance. Tie 1-1. And they look to be on track and will only hopefully get better as they continue to get more minutes together as they pursue another NWSL title after winning it in 2021. On the more global stages, Anthony, you get to watch any of USA basketball this weekend?
I actually watched their game earlier this morning.
Against Greece, minus Giannis. And that went about as you'd expect, USA-Greece minus Giannis.
Yes, pretty much. And then, they had another game over the weekend. It was the first game. I didn't get
against New Zealand.
I didn't get to watch that one.
Handled their business. It was fine.
Did what they had to do. Austin Reeves, man, he is something special, dude.
He is a great international player because he is the kind of guy that just fits on any team he's on. He's not like Brandon Ingram has talked about how he's struggling a little bit because he's used to being the guy with the ball. Mm-hmm. And when you get on a team with a bunch of other players, it's why the teams with LeBron and D Wade were so special, and why they were able to repeat it, by the way, with the Heat is because they were guys who could play without the ball, play with the ball, had a super high basketball IQ. Mm-hmm. But it's not just the IQ. It's not like Brandon Ingram's a dumb player, but it's like, what do you do without the ball? And the answer for him is not that much. Like he's not an active cutter. Yeah, he can spot up, but he's not the best spot up guy. He's got that kind of long release. So he's trying to figure out what to do when Anthony Edwards is the guy who has got the ball in his hands most often. Or Austin Reeves is like, yeah, I'm used to playing off of stars. Like, let's cook. And so he's a great fit for this Team USA team that should obviously win, but it's going to have some stiff competition from teams like Spain as this thing goes on. Do you happen to know when their next game is?
No. And I had their schedule up, and I didn't even look at the following game. I just saw they were playing at 8:30 this morning. I was like, oh, let me turn this on real quick.
I could probably find out real quick. Let's see.
Went right to it.
FIBA World Cup. There you go. God, there's a lot of games in this.
Mm-hmm.
Box score we want to click on. This is amazing radio. I can't even click on USA.
Oh, wow.
Alas. These games are early because they're in the Philippines. It's where this is taking place. But, yeah, USA 109-81 final this morning. Jalen Brunson and Anthony Edwards leading the scoring with 13 each for the starters. And then Austin Reeves, as you said, 15 off the bench. F1 was back this weekend off the summer break. Kind of a crazy race. Rain just starts coming out in buckets basically as they start. Late in the race, there's a huge rain issue as well. But the main thing stays the same. Max Verstappen wins again, his 9th straight victory that ties the all-time record. And then racing on foot, Anthony. Track and field worlds were incredible. Femke Bowl. I mean, let's real quick before we get to Femke Bowl, closing it out in the 4x4. How about the Americans in the 4x1? Yeah, six bad or less than ideal baton passes between the men's and the women's, and especially the men in the 4x1. Yeah. Just not very good, but so fast and able to make it up anyway. Really, really tremendous performance, and Noah Lyles ultimately takes it home. 3 gold medals for him. And, of course, as we told you Friday, he gets the 200-meter individual, the 100-meter individual, and then finishes it off with a 4x1. Team USA women upset Jamaica. Incredible performance. Gabby Thomas on the 3rd leg, the 200-meter silver medalist, and just runs an incredible turn, gets the baton to Sha'Carri Richardson, who holds off Sharika Jackson, who, of course, beat her in the 200. But Sha'Carri, man, 100, she's the best in the world. And that was kind of the weird thing, the way people talked about it, like it was some kind of upset. She got the baton with the lead, and she's the 100-meter champion, and they had to run 100 meters. Of course she took it home. What are we doing?
I don't know. I mean, I think Sha'Carri said it best. She's seen the world, behind her. She's seen the world turn against her, and it's just all about, just staying, confident in yourself. And that's what she did, and I'm glad, she was able to actually display what she's actually capable of on this stage.
For sure. It was awesome to see. And the men were waiting on the women in the wings, and Christian Coleman tackled Sha'Carri Richardson. It was terrifyingly hilarious. You're like, oh my God, is she okay? Okay, she's fine. Everyone's laughing. That was great. Super exciting stuff. And then, as you said, so the men crush it for Team USA in the 4x4 on the second to last race of the meet. The finals is the women's 4x4. U.S. had a baton issue in the semis.
That was so messed up, man.
Sucks, man, because they definitely would have won.
Yep.
That is an event that the U.S. absolutely demolishes people. And it was funny watching the race, the final, and you see the world record line, which was the U.S. last year in Eugene with Sid McLaughlin bringing it home.
Yep.
Now, Sid wouldn't have been in there, so I doubt you're setting any world records, even if you still have Dalilah Muhammad and everybody that they had last year. But to realize that, that's where the U.S. probably would have been close to finishing while everyone else was having a battle back here is crazy and gets you obviously really excited for Paris and the Olympics next year. But the meet starts with the first relay being the mixed 4x4. And in that, Femke Boll, who is the second best 400-meter hurdler in the world and also of all time behind Sydney McLaughlin-Larvoni, and is tremendous in the 400 flat as well when she runs it in relays for the Netherlands. she fell and cost her country a medal. I mean, she just fell. It was heartbreaking. It was terrible, and you felt so bad. And sure enough, full circle, closes out the meet. She's got time to make up as she takes the anchor leg, the last leg of the track side of the meet, and she stalks down the two runners in front of her and gets the Netherlands the gold medal at the line. Just a phenomenal human story. Femke Bol, congratulations. You deserve it. A true champion who deserves to have that gold medal. And she does. And now we're 1 year away from Paris. And I think if you're a Team USA track and field fan or someone who just enjoys watching track and field at the Olympics, you can expect to see a lot of Americans on the podium. And you just hope that everyone stays healthy or gets healthy in Sydney McLaughlin's case between now and then. All right, that is what else happened this weekend. Back to the Commanders next. How is the defense going to shape up? Logan and I took a stab at it this morning as it is within 24 hours of the cut deadline. Rosters to 53, 23 hours from now, 4 p.m. tomorrow. How's the defense going to look? Logan and I will give our best shot next here on The Hoffman Show. By the way, did you ever find your headphones?
Yes, I did find them actually.
Who do you think hid them? Who do we need to fight?
What were you saying?
I said now that you've got your headphones on. Who do we need to fight? Who do we think hid them? Where were they?
So Jeff Walker definitely came into the studio and took my headphones.
If you had given me one guess, 100% Jeff Walker.
Yep.
100%. All right, Jeff Walker. You come in, sometimes you just barge in, you're like, hey, I'm here. And I'm like, cool, like, what are you doing here? Which is fine. Jeff's a delight. But can you please leave my guy's headphones alone? He's a professional radio producer. He's got things to do.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My favorite story is, I think we were playing Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
That's not depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know? Like,
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah. And I'm not, I'm saying that, but like, your role for us was you did the dirty
Yeah.
work. And when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget.
Neither
The
will I.
caveman,
Yeah.
man. The caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Question for you real quick, Haney. That open that you just played, we're talking about you being king of the clip. Do you have any idea what the prediction was that I made that you didn't mark?
Yes, I do know what it was.
What was it?
It was about your followers on the.
Oh, the Since Defunct Hoffman Show Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so you did know.
No, I didn't. I
Oh.
just when you started to say it, I
Oh,
got
yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's what it was about.
And you seemed like you were struggling to finish the sentence. You were
No,
trying-
I wasn't struggling at all. I was actually about to go and see, but I forgot it's already, been disabled.
Yeah, that was too many things to manage.
Yeah.
So we veered off. I don't know. We might bring it back. You never know.
Yeah.
Never know.
Do I need to clip that too?
I said we might. That's not really a bold of a
Okay.
prediction.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah. All right. You know what we do at 5 o'clock every day?
I think I do.
All right. Well, let's find out if you hit the right button.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
All right. Today we did it ourselves. Damn it. We got a great lineup, by the way, for Not My Beat this week. Our buddy Michael Phillips going to join us tomorrow. Sam Fortier on Wednesday. Nikki Javala's already confirmed for Friday. So a bunch of great guests the rest of the week talking Commanders. But for right now, how about a little take command on a Monday? Logan Paulson and I did a full 53-man roster projection plus a 16-player practice squad this morning. We will do ours here on the Hoffman Show later on today with the updated news that Braden Daniels will not be on the initial 53 because of a torn rotator cuff. He's on IR, ending his season. So what we are going to give to you now is Logan and I's best prediction on the defensive side of the ball. So without further ado, a little Take Command Monday here on the Team 980. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. Logan Paulson there, Craig Hoffman here. It's time for the defense. And Logan, it is time for the hardest position group on this roster. We wound up with 25 on offense, which means we got 25 defense and the 3 specialists. And I am ready to put 11 defensive linemen on the football team.
I am also. And as we talk through it, I think we can, we'll kind of flesh out that analysis a little bit more. But Yeah, this is a tough one. I think if you're looking for any shenanigans, if you're like one of those people who likes kind of roster madness on this day, like this is a spot to definitely keep an eye on. So,
Yeah. So I'm typing it out now.
so who we got? We got John Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat. Wow, that's a bunch of shockers there, Coach.
I know.
Phil Mathis. I think that's an interesting one because of the injury at the moment.
Yep.
Like,
We'll come back to him in a second.
Yeah.
For sure.
Johnny Ridgeway. Who's it? Andre Jones, Casey Toohill, James Smith Williams, and
KJ Henry.
so you put 12 spots down, didn't you?
Did I put it 12?
Oh, you forgot FA.
Oh, there we go. I was like, who am I missing? F.A. Obata. I don't know why you cut any of these guys, other than you need spots elsewhere. But I think all these dudes can play. I think the down the roster guys are guys that can play for you on special teams and have. The best special teams play made all camp was James Smith Williams, hustling down and saving a ball inside the 5-yard line. But FA's played teams for you. Casey's played teams for you. Andre Jones and KJ Henry have played teams in their college careers and look ready to do it at the NFL level. And then you need the depth inside. The guy that I was waiting to make this even more difficult, I think, was Benning Pootoe. Yeah. And he did not have a remarkable game. Not like it was bad, I don't think. I mean, you probably better feel for that than me. Yeah. But it's not like he went out and had 2 sacks and 5 tackles for loss. I think you can get him through to the practice squad if you need to. And I think the other thing that happened in the game that I thought was interesting is they went back to playing F.A. and James at 3 technique, which we saw in the Baltimore joints. We didn't really see against Baltimore in the game. Yeah. And I thought both guys did a good job. I thought James really moved the pocket well, both outside and inside, like really pushed it. And that power is what they're looking for at that position, I would think. And I think that gives you a little bit more depth behind John Allen at that 3 technique. And some flexibility. And at the end of the day, this is, again, the epitome of the philosophy thing. How do you do this so you don't lose really, really good football players? And if you cut any of those 11, I think you're losing a good football player / KJ Henry, who has the potential to become one.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I think FA has been great rushing from 3 technique all camp. I think the problem you run into is, like, what is the actual depth when you got to play, like, first and second down 3 technique? Because, as much as James is a big, strong guy and FA is a big, strong guy, like, that's not a matchup I want if I can avoid it at all costs.
3 minutes.
A guy that you didn't mention is Abdullah Anderson. He's had a very, very good camp, and I think he's been very consistent in terms of his production.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports.
Camp, and I think he's been very consistent in terms of his production. And, I think if you're being totally honest with yourself, I think you probably would cut Ridgeway and keep Abdullah if you're just looking at production. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to try and get Abdullah to practice squad, I would assume. And I think based on Ridgeway's performance last year, I think they keep him around, saying he's coming off a back injury, coming off the pec, and he's still trying to get himself healthy. So I think Anderson's a really interesting one, but I agree in terms of the defensive ends. I look at the secondary and no one really stepped up and said, I deserve to be the 6th DB. I look at the linebacker and no one really stepped up to me and said, I need to be the 5th linebacker. And then at the defensive line room, I think you had, like how many guys? Casey, James, Andre, KJ, even to a certain extent in the last preseason game, had a very nice pass rush that kind of showed some juice. And all those guys played well. Like, Casey in the last preseason game created a ton of pressure, had a couple quarterback hits. I think he had 3 quarterback hits in that game. James had a quarterback hit. Like, those guys rushed well. And I think, if you're trying to kind of say, I deserve to be on the roster, like, that to me is what that last game is for, is to kind of say, hey, like, don't, like, look at this. I've got some pass rush juice. I've got some team's ability. Why are you going to try and replace me with a young guy? And Andre Jones, who was less consistent in terms of production in that game. And I think when you get to see them 1-to-1 rushing the same guys down in and down out, you see why those other 2 guys have been in the NFL for 3 years, and Andre's a rookie. So I think that is how I would do it. Again, KJ, because he's a 5th round draft pick, I think he makes it. So you're at 11, and I think you're looking at, I heard an argument today basically saying that, oh, well, who's going to play teams for you? Like, you don't have any special teams dogs. But I think when you look at linebacker, you've got Mayo, who's a special teams guy, Kalik, who's a special teams guy. You look at the secondary, you got Percy Butler, you got Jeremy Reeves, You got Christian Holmes, special teams guys. Like those are 5 excellent dudes on teams. And then you can flush that group out saying, hey, we get one of our we get Pringle to play some teams. We get Dax to play some teams, Casey, James, Andre, and you're at 11 guys who are good teams players. And I think Christian Rodriguez will probably end up playing some teams. So I think you're okay from a special team standpoint. Yeah, Arma, that's a great point. So I think I don't think that's a great argument considering like the linebackers and DBs, how good those dudes are at teams. I think you can fill them in with Casey, James, and whoever else. You know.
And especially like, I mean, Casey and James run well enough, and especially Jones runs well enough. Like Jones runs like a linebacker. So
he played like a Sam linebacker. He played like that, Clay Matthews position at USC.
Yeah, 2-point stance. Yep. So he's a guy that is for like the roles that you would typically put a linebacker on special teams. Like he can do it. So, and again, like James had that play where he saves the ball inside the 5-yard line. Like Casey's had plays like that in the past where he's downfield making, first guy down on punt. Like those guys can do it. I think the interesting thing too here is like, if you cut one of those guys, they're gone, right? Yeah. If you cut DeJohn Harris, if you cut Milo Eifler, you're probably able to bring them back on Thursday. Yeah. And this gets into the big Phil discussion. How bad's that calf? Yeah. And what is that? And this to me like becomes a very interesting thing too of like, okay, well, do you IR Big Phil and then just backfill a 5th linebacker, or do you IR Big Phil and bring up Abdullah Anderson, and do you actually go into Arizona with 11 defensive linemen?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think and I think KJ's probably inactive on game day, kind of like Braden Daniels is for the offense. And I think, again, because then I want to make this point very clear. Because you have such good teams, guys, like really, really high-level team guys in Khalid Hudson, Percy Butler, Christian Holmes, Jeremy Reeves, and Mayo, like they're really, really good at special teams. Excellent, right? Mm-hmm. You can get away with having 3 defensive linemen covering kicks. You know what I'm saying? Because you know that they're going to be kind of supplemental guys in the coverage because you've got absolute dogs. If you didn't have that high quality special teams value in those other backup positions, you'd probably need to make a different decision, but you do. Like I remember when I was with Danny Smith in 2010, 11, 12, he was a special teams coach. Basically, he said, like, as long as we have 2 guys at gunner who are absolute dogs, we can pretty much put anybody we want out there. So I was able to play punt coverage, even though I was terrible at it, because we had 2 dudes who were going to make the tackle every time. And I was like, this is the best job ever because I just have to protect and slowly jog my big butt down there and pretend like I want to make a tackle, Who
were the gunners?
I forget who they were. They were really good, though.
And then you also had Zoe.
Zoe and Mike Sellers. It was like, just be around and they'll make the tackle. So I think it was Armstrong was one who ran like a 4.140. And that was back in the day where you could like literally just run out of bounds and run up the sideline and then run back in. And like you didn't actually have to fight a double vice. So he was excellent and he'd get down there fair catch all the time. But what I'm saying is that they've got Percy Butler, who's excellent at gunner. Christian Holmes was excellent last year. And Jeremy Reeves on punt is basically like a 3rd gunner. Like those dudes are going to make 90% of your tackles. So whoever else is out there, as long as they don't mess up the protection and can move their carcasses down the field, you're okay. Like that. And then Joey Sly, the reason you keep Joey Sly is because he kicks the ball out the back of the end zone. So again, not a huge priority in that department either. So I think just when you look at the construction of how Katzer has built the special teams units, you're in a better spot than a lot of other teams where you have to make some more challenging decisions with regards to teams.
So last thing on James and Casey and FA and why you keep them. Ron was avoidant of a question about Chase Young, and that
is a good point. That's a great point.
Because if the doctor's appointment with Chase and this stinger went well, I don't know why Ron would go, hey, I just want to talk about the game and talk about these guys that are out here. You just say, yeah, he's good. We're ready to go. He'll be practicing on whatever day they practice. It would be very silly not to. And Ron knows that Chase is a lightning rod when it comes to attention.
Yeah.
So
I like how you worded that.
That's not my favorite answer that's ever been. And I'm saying like Ron did a bad job with it. Like if it didn't go well, him coming out and saying like, we got a problem is also not a good thing. Point is, you need depth and you need guys that are ready right now because if Chase Young misses even a couple of weeks, like you do not want a significant drop off. And for as good as Andre Jones was for a stretch of training camp, like, and it's cool that he played with the ones against Baltimore, I'm starting James Smith-Williams or F.A. Obata or Casey Tuhill opposite of Montez Sweat because that's what we did all last year, and our defense was pretty good with those dudes.
I don't think it's a coincidence that the starting the fourth preseason game, it's James. It's the 3 rotation is Casey, F.A., and James. Like they obviously value those guys a little bit more than the other guys, and then they all played well. So it's like,
and then they didn't play in the second half, no shoulder pads.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is, what exactly did Ron say about Chase? I didn't realize he was that kind of.
I can see if I can pull up the transcript real quick.
And Craig, stop me if I'm wrong. Like, you've worked with Zoe. Like, I remember Zoe playing with stingers like it was like a sprained ankle. I remember that being like a very common thing to do. That's why I'm like a little confused by this whole stinger diagnosis.
Yeah, so he's asked about Chase's doctor's visit and injury status. He says, no, we're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about what's coming up, and I don't have to give you guys a report until it's time to. So let's please stay focused on this, which is correct, by the way. Like they do not have to give an injury report until the Wednesday before the season. And Ron is the type of guy that would play some gamesmanshipy type of stuff and then be like, Chase is fine.
I mean, he's
but
practiced,
why? Right?
He's
if everything's
practice.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the thing is, like, they told him he practiced, but there was instructions for him and for the O lineman that he was going against, like, stay away from his head, like, keep your head out of things. Please do not mess this thing up and make it worse. He's waiting final clearance for like full contact, and it was not in full pads. So no, I agree. Like, stingers can be things you play through. They can be way worse. So I'm not here to try to mitigate whatever pain he's going through. I'm not saying you are either, obviously. But I don't know, man. When he first got it, it was supposed to be like, oh yeah, he's got a stinger. He'll be back in 3 days, and it's been like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, my trust level there is not super high,
and that's a great point. That's a great point. And I think you want as many good football players because the Phil thing's interesting. That stinger thing's interesting. So I think you do. That's a great point. You need to kind of make sure you're insulated there, and one way to do that is keeping good football players on the defensive line, especially when you're counting on that group to be very, very productive. So.
All right. Any young pass rushers that we want to write down for practice squad consideration?
The only one would be Bradley King, but I think if you're keeping 11, I don't know if you need that necessarily.
Yeah, I think he's had a solid little preseason. He just
got a nice sack.
Unfortunately for him, he's the same place he's kind of been the last couple of years. Like continuously getting better. I don't want to put that on William, but he's just kind of stuck behind a log jam.
Yeah, the other one would be Pryor, who has some pass rush juice, but again didn't play. Was kind of just there for part. Like at times he flashed, but then he was just kind of just there for.
Would you keep William Bradley King, or would you keep Pryor?
Probably William Bradley King.
Okay, then Pryor's name's not getting written down, but congrats on getting mentioned in the podcast, and I wish you well in your future endeavors. All right, linebacker Jamin Davis, Cody Barton, David Mayo, Kalik Hudson.
Yep.
Done and done. And then
done.
You got Eifler and Harris on practice squad. And is there really anything else to talk about there?
No. I mean, the other thing to keep an eye on is I guess Jamin's court case is coming up. Like, how does that go? And then Cody Barton has not played exceptionally well in the preseason. So do they make some type of move for a veteran who gets released?
That is something to watch and always something to consider. But I think initially...
No, these are the guys, for sure.
These are the guys. And I think the other thing, a fun discussion when we get into regular season is, like, who actually plays? Like, Kalik has continued to make plays.
He balled. He straight balled in that third game. Like, he had a great game.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, he had a Logan Paulson final preseason game type of game. So, has he found his way on the field? And like with Barton struggling, do your linebackers become Davis and Hudson? And you just have a ton of speed out there, and you trust Jamin to be the Mike. Like, I don't think that's the worst idea that I've ever had. Yeah. That's a low bar, but we'll keep moving. All right, DBs,
safeties,
Emmanuel Forbes. Let's do corners first. BSJ, Fuller.
Yep.
I'm doing full names for roster guys. Good job, Craig. Keep typing. And then we got Forbes, BSJ, Kendall Fuller. I think Danny Johnson is all set.
Yeah.
And then
Quan.
Yeah, let's put Quan down kind of in. He's always my transition guy from corner to safety.
Yeah.
And then at safety, you've got Cam Curl, Derek Forrest, Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves, and who am I missing?
We're missing somebody. Gosh, this is bad podcasting.
Oh,
right
Christian
now.
Holmes.
There we go. There he is.
Let's insert row DB with the corners, Christian Holmes, and then we're going to delete this safety row there. And then just to fill out the roster, I will go ahead and put Cameron Cheeseman, who had all good snaps.
Did he?
Finally.
I don't watch the snaps as well as you do. That's your job.
I try every time I went to go fast forward through a special teams play because I did not watch this game live the other night. I was like, oh, nope, got to watch. And I think that it was good. And also, I know that I would have gotten 1,000 tweets. People would have been like, oh, there's another bad one. And I didn't get any tweets. So I think we're good on all the snaps. So that's your 53. But let's go back to the DBs and talk about it. To me, this is actually pretty easy and straightforward. Holmes is a starting gunner. Johnson can, and by the way, another guy that we haven't mentioned is good on teams good enough on teams.
Yep.
Provides you
had
inside.
a good and played. I think that Danny Johnson, shout out, inside outside, did a great job at both spots. And I think
100%.
Wild Goose had been starting at the nickel for a long time, but didn't quite make it as an outside guy. And I think Danny's ability to do both really elevated him. And I think that makes this decision super easy. It's just like he's a guy that, again, like they value position flexibility. He's done both. He's good on teams. Like
No complaints.
Easy decisions. Yeah.
By the way, he's returned kicks in the past.
I was going to say, I thought that was something that he'd done, right? Kickoffs.
Yeah, he's returned kickoffs in the past for this team. So that could be a thing. If you don't want Gibson back there or whatever, Dax. I don't think he's returned punts, but I'm sure he's caught him in practice.
Sure.
So that's. To me, this is super straightforward. We should talk about Quan's night the other night. I feel like he had another couple of not your favorite plays. And where does that put him?
The thing I love about last night was just how physical he was. Like he had some absolute waylay hits, and I think
you see the upside.
Yeah,
sure.
He's a good ball player, and I think the thing about him is like he's playing Buffalo nickel for most of the game yesterday, as opposed to true nickel, and it's just a little different, in terms of how you line up and set stuff and. He's still got so much on his plate mentally. It's just hard. I think it's just really challenging for him to kind of find a home. But I think that in the long run will really help this team out because, like, when there's an issue, he can be the next guy up at multiple spots. And I also like the physicality element because I think the thing that jumps out to me is that I wasn't sure if he was physical enough to play in the box consistently because in college it's good, but it's not great. Sidney Brown was excellent at that, and he was fine. But I think seeing that physicality is something that says, hey, in a pinch, if Cam's down, he can be that box player for you. So I think I'm very high on him still. I think, it's been a little inconsistent, but I think he's a guy that is really going to make this football team better. Maybe not in the next 6 weeks, but like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I think can play teams. Like I think he's a good pick. He's good. He's fit the team well. So I'm high on him.
I think all it does is affect like how much you trust him early. But Toby Altizer asked me this on the newly minted Take Command pregame show, which Logan and I will be taking over in the regular season, but debuted its preseason edition the other day with the new name and the fancy imaging and the whole deal. But yeah, Logan and I will be doing pregame again. But Toby asked me when I was on with he and Denton about Quan, and he's like, "Do you have concerns?" And what I told him was this: in the regular season, he is going to have a much more clearly defined and smaller role.
Yeah.
So this idea that they've overloaded him is true, but it's going to help him in the long run when his job is not so big. He will have had the understanding and the experience of all these different positions, but now it's going to be like, Quan, here is your chunk of plays. Here's the guys you're going to be dealing with. Be very focused on this, and you have a tangential awareness of everything else that's happened because of your experience throughout training camp and throughout the spring of playing all these different positions. And he's going to benefit a ton from the game planning. So no mega concerns about Quan Martin for me. They do probably need to be a little bit more intentional with the role, but like if that's not part of the plan, then that would be very surprised anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so I think that's great analysis. And I think the thing that's interesting about this group is like, who do you keep? Do you keep practice squad guys? Does Wild Goose make practice squad? Does Kendall Smith make practice squad? Like,
Yeah.
it's just we've got like 20 practice squad guys, and I think I think the roster has felt pretty established to me for a long time, and to me, it's these other guys that are gonna because they'll play football. A lot of these guys, like some of those old linemen, they'll play football this year. Some of these
Yeah.
DBs, like Wild Goose, was elevated multiple times last year. Like
Yeah,
they're
he was
gonna
on
play.
he was on the roster for most of the year.
Yeah, so can you keep guys? Can you keep the guys you need to keep? You know, and how do you make those decisions? Because with the expanded practice squad, to me, that's really compelling because it's like that is an extension of your team with this elevation, regression rule that they have now. Like it's really just an extension of the roster in a way that it wasn't with old practice squad rules.
Yeah, I mean Jace Whitaker with the
Yes,
pick the other
with the
night.
pick. Yeah.
Whiteside, I thought had a really good camp.
He did.
Guy that
Yep.
kept flashing. Terrell Burgess we've talked about before. Is a guy with some NFL, very limited, but some NFL experience
Yep.
and plays safety and corner in the past. So like I'm gonna write him down. I don't know that he's gonna ultimately make it, but
he was consistent, and like I want consistent football players, and so like out of that
maybe he
list
does.
right there, I probably want, because I really think Kendall Smith has a lot of upside, so maybe you keep him over Burgess. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that to me, the practice squad stuff is much more challenging to figure out because like just looking at the offensive line, some of those guys had excellent training camps. It's just about like can they figure it out, and I don't know if they can. So, in terms of roster, like the DBs were because like I think the DBs have been easy because guys played themselves out of spots. While other guys, the guys that were supposed to play in the spots, played really well. Like Percy Butler had a great preseason. Jeremy had a great preseason. Like Christian Holmes, like, gosh, that dude is a physical son of a gun. Like
little hit or miss on coverage, but like is exactly what you want him to be at this stage for a guy that's primarily a special teams player and a dog on special teams.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy that maybe switches to safety at some point in his career. Like I was standing on the sideline watching the game, and they pulled, and they were trying to run an outside like a pin pull play on him, and he like absolutely chinned the guard that was pulling to get him. Like, and it was like one of those loud like cracks of the helmet. And then he like after he cracks the guard, he goes and cracks the running back, and I was like, that dude is a guy that is physical as all heck. And again, like the coverage is a little up and down, but he's there to cover kicks and split double vices, so he'll do that at a high level.
Definitely. Okay, and then Cheeseman, Joey, Tress, done. And
wait, you think Tress makes the team? I'm just kidding.
I think that he probably has a track record that allows him to proceed forward as a professional football player on a 53-man roster. They tell us we should not really engage in certain parts of the content process. We should definitely post our content. We should tease our content. Hey, tell the people when things are happening on the show. Put that out there on social media. Then make sure you share the content afterwards. But definitely do not engage with the people who comment on it. It's the deepest, darkest underbelly of the internet. No. Do not read the comments. But every single week, 5:30 on a Wednesday, what do we do, Anthony Haney?
We read
Yep.
those comments, baby.
I'm so glad that you gave us a really good one there because next week we're going to have a fancy new intro for this. We just got the big voice guy, old Jim Cutler, to do some stuff for us. And in my head, the fancy intro includes Anthony going, read those comments, and he just gave me the material I needed to work with. He didn't even know that. You didn't know that, Anthony. Tell the people you didn't know that.
I did not at all.
But next week, you bet your bottom dollar you're going to see it. it's a running bit on the show, but also like an actual thing. I'm trying to learn French. My wife and I are going to Paris next year for the Olympics, so I'm trying to learn French. It's incredibly difficult. I'm very bad at it. Tips for someone learning French. You did the reverse. For people that don't know, you started as a French speaker, and I was reading on Wikipedia, so I don't know if it's true, but also Haitian Creole, first 2 languages, and then had to learn English, which I know is very, very difficult to learn when it's not your native language. French, English, they don't seem compatible. What's your tip for me as I try to learn French?
I would say watch movies in French with English subtitles. That's what I did. I watched a lot of movies in French, but I had the English. No, I watched a lot of movies in English with the French subtitles. So like movies, music, it's kind of something that's like easy, like on the brain. It's not too much information, but you can still enjoy it and you can see the conversation, because that's the hardest part. Learning like a little word, like to say like, hey, my name is this or whatever, that's easy. But holding a conversation, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, right now I'm really just trying to master, like, I'm American, do you speak English? Because I think in Paris I can get away with that.
Yeah, so je suis américain.
Yeah.
Et je ne parle pas en français.
See, even the way you said that is not the way Duolingo says to say that. So I'll just have to come back to my new French tutor, Benjamin Sejus. BSJ, appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Sure.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Jason Wright says the Commanders are back. Do we agree? We will discuss coming up in just a few minutes. But Anthony, I read a quote this morning on Twitter from a story from Albert Breer that made me want to pull my hair out initially, which is always great. Good reaction, way to just make sure you read the whole story, get the full picture. Hoffman nailed that. But I actually don't I can't decide what my take is here, which is a great thing for a sports talk radio. So we're gonna talk through it out loud. Here's the quote from Albert Breer's story in Monday Morning Quarterback at SI.com. The quote is from Ron Rivera, and he's talking to Breer in his office in Ashburn a couple weeks ago. I guess Albert was in town. And he said, you can ask Stephanie, first of all, to set the scene, Rivera driving home from the season finale. Howell has just played well. They beat the Cowboys, and he's retelling the story. And he says, you can ask Stephanie, of course, Ron's wife. All we bleeping talked about was the quarterback. What the quarterback did, who he was, Rivera said. All I kept saying, bleep. If I would have known this, I would have played him sooner. When you only have so much time to show it, it's hard. I kept thinking, gah. But after that game, everything told me this kid, give him the opportunity and see what he does with it. If only there was someone who could have given him that opportunity. Oh, right, that was Ron. Ron's the one who could have did that. And this is where I'm very torn. Because I appreciate the transparency from Ron. And it is easy in hindsight to go, damn, wish I would have. But I think the struggle is you get to a point with Rivera where you just go, like, it's your job to see that. And yes, it is more obvious once you get him in the game and he shows the moxie and he does all the things and the arm and he learns from his mistake. But I think that is just another piece of data that shows that when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, like Rivera has been very, very bad at it. Whatever it is that you're supposed to see within that guy, he saw it in Carson Wentz, or at least was willing to, say publicly that he did, even if he may have quickly realized that was a mistake. And they didn't see it fast enough in Heineke when they had him in their building. And I will always go back to the circumstances of how Sam doesn't get on the field sooner. They won too many games with Taylor is the basic version of it. The Cleveland game's inexplicable, but are you really going to put Sam in with your season on the line for his career debut? That doesn't seem to make any sense either until you know what you know now. But I just, man, it's a quote that hits you and you just go, isn't that kind of your job to know that sooner when you have him there the whole time?
Yes. That's the basic answer. But also, I mean, you didn't really get to see too much of Sam during camp. Maybe against, the P squad. I mean, would he have been on the P squad?
I mean, he was on the roster and he was in camp. Like there's no practice squad in camp because you're at 90 guys.
Yeah.
So he played okay. I think a lot of us saw like a little bit of something with him last year. We were like, oh, that guy, a little something. And you see him I will say in the preseason games, like I know there was bad process in there. I know that there was like things that you're like, yeah, you can't really do that against NFL starters. But like there was a gamerness to him that you're like, I don't know, man. There seems to be something there.
But it was also, you got a guy like Taylor Heineke that also is a gamer. So I think that's why, Ron just stuck with his guns and rode Taylor as long as he could, just because he knew, you never know with Taylor Heineke. Like, you never really know. But it's also important to know that Taylor Heineke, we weren't really even supposed to see Sam. We wouldn't have seen any of Sam had it not been for Taylor Heineke saying, no, let Sam go out there.
That's addressed in the piece, and right? And it was like Ron's initial instinct was play Taylor for a series or two and then go to Sam. So you would have seen him. He just wouldn't have started the game, which, look, Logan said at the time he understood it, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, Logan doesn't know what he's talking about. But I didn't subscribe to that theory. I will say that.
Yeah.
You want to take the pressure off, like, what? No, I want to see if he can handle it. And that's kind of the point is like, it again goes to the point that like the league needs a developmental system. It needs more opportunities for guys. But if he's in the building, like to me, this is also another indictment. Sorry to kick a dead horse here, but like Scott Turner, what are you doing, man? Like you're the one running the offensive meetings. Do you not give your young, potentially future quarterback? But it also goes to he's a fifth rounder. Like, how much you really invested in that guy? It's just, the thing is, like, sometimes things can be frustrating without anyone really being wrong. And I don't want to beat up on Rivera for being honest and open, because that does not incentivize him to keep being honest about decisions that he makes. And I, as someone who would like to know the truth, as a journalist / I think no fan wants to be lied to. I want him to keep telling the truth. Unfortunately, I think this truth does not reflect particularly well on him. I think he knows that, but it is a data point that if I'm Josh Harris, I'm considering as I look into the future. I'll put it that way. I think that was a fair, not too harsh take.
I think it was perfect, to be honest.
Perfect take. I did it
was
again.
And look, not a lot of people can do what you do, Craig.
That's why you got to listen 4 to 7 each and every day. Some days we can't even get the sound on. Same show, hour and 45 minutes later.
Yep.
Perfect takes.
Yes.
All right, we'll see what we can do next with Jason Wright's take that the Commanders are back. That's after what's trending here on the Team 980.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
It is the Hoffman Show. I'm Craig Hoffman here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app alongside super producer Anthony Haney. My pick 6 at 6, these 6 players that I identified as interesting to watch in the preseason finale, how they do. That'll be our pick 6 today, coming up at 6 o'clock. And then, Haney, are you ready? You ready to make a roster?
I am indeed, Craig.
Good. I don't understand, like Rivera and the Martys, it takes them 2 days. We're going to do it in 2 segments.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be real quick, real simple.
I got a preview. You think I should break off a little preview right now?
Sure.
I don't want to ruin it, but Tressway, Joey Sly, Cameron Cheeseman are going to be 3. 3 of the 53.
No way.
Yeah.
I think Ron Rivera is going to be the head coach.
That doesn't count towards the 53, but that's good prediction. What if he got fired? What if the fever dream came true for a lot of fans and just Harris comes out of the box and he's like, Bieniemy's got this thing.
That would suck.
Yeah, that would be. Well, let's just say we'd have some content.
Yes, a lot of content.
That would be
for the next 2 weeks. We were worried about what we're gonna do in the next.
Bro,
2 weeks.
I'm definitely worried about the next 2 weeks. That is for sure. I think tomorrow we hear from Rivera, and then Wednesday we get Eric Stokes, the director of player personnel. So we do have some good insight coming on the next couple of days from press conferences and such. So make sure the best of it gets to your ears here on the Hoffman Show. Right now, though, flashback to the weekend, courtesy of NBC4. Jason Wright on the broadcast had a couple of interesting things to say when he joined Chick Hernandez and B. Mitch in the booth. Jason's an interesting character in all of this. I don't mean to dehumanize when I say character, just like his role in the story, the literal definition of character here, is pretty interesting in terms of the next, let's call it 24 to 48 months of Commanders, the next 2 to 4 years. Like, typically team presidents stay around a while. And so when I say, like, next 48 months, like, ideally, Jason is actually the right man for the job, and they can keep the continuity of the things they've started to build. You clean up some of the loose ends, and, you don't have to put out as many fires, and some of the things where they've made huge mistakes in the last couple of years that are under the Jason Wright umbrella don't repeat themselves. And you're able to move forward and have a really successful business operation to go with what is hopefully going to become a successful football team on the field. But I think why a lot of people obviously are wary of Jason and the job that he's done is because he ultimately, and I've said this about Ron, and I've said this about Jason, and it is what it is, they were willing to go work for Dan Snyder. I think Jason was brought in with obviously very clear eyes of like, I'm here to be a crisis manager. I would be curious in a moment of honesty now on the backside of the sale if he knew when he went in, he's like, yeah, I'll work for these people, take their money, and help eventually. Like, I know they're going to be gone. Like, there's no way they're going to survive this. And so he knew this was a way for himself to get he was opportunistic, which I don't say is a negative thing, and got a president job of an NFL team, and like, cool. But from what I know of Jason, it was, he was being consulted because they hired or were looking at McKinsey where he was working, and they eventually were just like, do you just want to do this? And he was like, yeah, sure. So the question is, how do you then go from crisis management to the next step? Or to you're out on the backside of the crisis. And we're about to find out how he is at that job. And to an extent, like Jason's about to find out how he is at that job. So I think what's interesting, though, about these comments is Jason obviously has had his name signed on statements from the Snyders and has like had to kind of be in their camp or defend certain things along the way because he was the public face of the organization. And sometimes when that's your job, you have to eat it. But I think now you're hearing kind of what I would guess are more truthful thoughts. And also because of how things have changed and because of how quickly the fans have come back and things have changed, not just externally, but internally, you're seeing a very, very different organization a lot faster than even he expected as the person in charge of it.
Jason, I mean, look, this is such a turnaround. You came here 2020. We're here now in 2023, and it is literally a whole different ballgame.
It is. It's night and day in the business, in what you see on the field, and more importantly, the fans. Like, they are back together and unified once again.
Has anything surprised you in all of this excitement going around this team now?
You know, it came back more quickly than I thought. I'm going to be honest. I prepared myself and my staff that it would take time on the other side of a sale for fans to really welcome us back into their lives, because I thought there'd be a little bit of cynicism, there'd be a little bit of holdover, but man, the enthusiasm is much bigger than I thought, and a big credit goes to Josh and the team that came in. They've been authentic, they've set a vision, and they've done a great job.
I gotta say, man, I agree, and I've hinted at this and maybe even flat out said it. I can't believe how quickly it came back, and I think that we underestimated. At least I won't speak for anyone else. I underestimated, although looking at your face right now, Anthony, it's pretty clear you agree.
Yep.
I underestimated just how much of the fan base was like bursting at the door, peering around the corner, waiting for Dan to be gone. I thought it was going to take a lot more.
I mean, I agree. I thought it was going to be I thought it was just going to, take some time. Like, maybe it wasn't probably going to be the first game or the second game, but, like, eventually it was going to build up to, people packing out.
I thought it was going to take years.
Dude, we're talking about the preseason.
Yeah.
We're talking about people tailgating for preseason games, showing up, showing out. We're talking about week one almost being a sellout.
They have been talking about that for weeks, though.
Yeah,
and there's an old sales trick about being like, it's so close.
Yeah.
So I do hope it is a sellout.
I think
but
it's
like,
a sellout, man.
Hey, how many weeks in a row are you going to tell us that it's close and we got to buy our tickets now? You think we're all fools. But no, in all seriousness, like, it is something that I thought was going to take not just time, but I thought it was going to take winning. Like, I thought it was going to take, like, okay, cool, you got rid of that guy. Now show us that you can build a winner. And, like, the same coach and the same players. And I do think they luck out timing-wise with Howell, because there's a guy there that, rightly or wrongly, we'll see, gives people hope, and you can sell hope. This has happened far faster than I anticipated. And here's the one thing I will say, though, not to, like, put a damper on it, but just thinking out loud. There is a chance we're calling this fight too early. Because of the slow, like, drawn-out nature of the sale, week one is kind of, second to what we did with Burgundy and Sold, is like the moment where everybody gets to come together as a fan base and celebrate. Well, what happens week 3? What happens week 7? Is it the new shiny object in town, or does it come back to the same, or not necessarily the same old cynicism, but some sister, wife, cousin, whatever of that cynicism that is standard in a lot of NFL fan bases that haven't done a lot of winning? How much of a leash, how much of a honeymoon do they have? I know Harris and Magic and Rails and everybody feels that pressure. The question is, what kind of grace period do they have? And we're just not going to know for months, if not years, depending on how long it takes to get everything in place and build something sustainable on the football side, as well as the business. But at the very least, the Commanders are back from a business sense, that the Bud Lights and kind of the standard type of sponsors that are with every other NFL team are back, and like that's ultimately a great thing. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, it is time for our Pick 6. We picked 6 players who could have a big impact on the Commanders' 53-man roster, and their performances in the final game of the preseason would have an effect on that. So, how do they do? We look at it, litigate it even. Next, not going to litigate anything. That's far too strong. We'll examine here on the Team 980. Secondary wise, I mean, there's a lot of talk about Forbes. He had some tough one-on-one reps that were kind of making their
can
way.
we,
But
can
like,
we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah,
Like,
and that's what I was going to say is like one-on-ones are designed for the offense to win, and especially the offense to win if they want to take a DB inside towards the middle of the field where there would typically be help. And every single one of everyone being like, oh, he got smoked. It's like, yeah, the dude ran a triple move where the quarterback would have been sacked and then ran to where the help would be.
and also all those are in the red zone, like red zone one-on-ones. So like, yes, like it's just so frustrating when fans get all crazy about it. Cause like red zone, you're going to run quarters, like red quarters all the time. So there's going to be a dude standing like right there. Like if you want to run in, like good luck, you're going to be dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, like it just doesn't work that way. Like go run in there. Fine. Get smoked by that guy. Get smoked by Foster or whoever, or Cam Curl. So it's always super frustrating. And like in those man situations, like in the red zone situations, you'll see the quarterback hold the ball longer because it's like they're running a dig, they're running an out, they're running and if anything, the pressure is more acute in the red zone. So the ball has to be out quicker. So it's like all this stuff. And it's just like, and so what I will say is I thought his reps were competitive. I thought he was in relatively good position. Did he lose a couple reps? Yes. But I don't think that situation is entirely realistic. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thinking about a rant today, and you want to know what? I'm in the mood. We're gonna go for it. This is an unplanned rant. It's one I was trying to keep in my back pocket, but I'm just gonna go for it. Some of the comments that I read through and look, social media is accessible. Social media is people. Social media is fans. Social media is the same calls that we've been getting in sports radio for 30 years put into a tweet or a YouTube comment or whatever. These are real people with real opinions who think these things. And I truly do not understand how some of y'all like sports, because it seems like your entire sports fan existence is miserable. You always want everyone fired, everyone traded. And I truly do not understand how you live that way. Sports are supposed to be fun. Sports are, there are serious parts to it, but the flippancy with which you just want to trade Chase Young. It's August, at the time I read this comment, 15th. They're not trading Chase Young. What are you talking about? Ron Rivera should be fired. EB should be the head coach. When was the last time an NFL head coach got fired in August? What I mean this sincerely. If that's all you think about all day is the coach getting fired, why are you here? What part of this is fun for you? I don't get it. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up in 10 minutes, you get your latest 53-man roster projection in the entire DC sports media ecosystem, which I think is probably going to be the first one to react to the news that Braden Daniels, the fourth-round pick for the Commanders at tackle, is out for the season with a torn rotator cuff. So how does that affect the rest of the roster? We will dive in coming up at 6:15. However, right now,
the 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
I'm going to be their biggest and harshest critic, but I'm also their #1 fan.
Yeah, no, Eric, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be their harshest critic and their #1 fan. I don't think, Anthony, by the way, I think we're going to have to pick a different soundbite to end that stinger, because I get distracted by that bite every time, and it's a good one. It's 100% because I can't handle it. So
I will do my best to find you another clip.
I say we can take nominees from the audience, from anyone really. I don't know what we're gonna do, but we got to figure that out. We got to figure out what we want to put there. Do you have an idea?
Not right now, but I guess in 2 weeks we will.
No, I mean we're gonna do pick 6 more often than that.
Okay. Oh yeah, definitely before that. Dang.
Yeah, if it was 1st and 10, you'd have time.
Yeah.
So,
You make a great point.
can we find a Rivera interesting and important? He hasn't said it in a long time.
That's easy. Yeah. I
But
got you.
if we got that, I think that could be a good one.
I got you.
Kind of fits the mold. All right. Here's the 6 players that I chose. Cameron Cheeseman, Ricky Stromberg, Aaron Montero, Quan Martin, Dax Milne, Benning Potoe. All right. The reality is not a lot to talk about with these guys, in part because they kind of did the stuff you'd expect. I tried to take a little bit of a swerve away from Dax Milne away from Kaz Allen by doing the Dax Milne thing. And then Dax had a drop. We'll get there. Let's go in order here. Let's start off with our first guy. The #1 guy that I picked was the long snapper.
#1.
And that's because he's the guy that I knew was 100% going to make the team and play. Clean night. I got no Cameron Cheeseman tweets. And watching back the game, I didn't see any bad snaps. Hallelujah. You love to see it. Good. We're done with the long snapper talk, hopefully for the rest of the season. Clearly, they will continue to monitor it. If there's bad snaps, they will bring in guys to try out. But as for right now, it looks like we've cleared the long snapper issues. Sweet. Onwards we go.
#2.
Ricky Stromberg. Played well. Rivera talked about Stromberg actually after the game, specifically singled him out as someone who did very well, playing a lot of right guard, also played a little bit of center. I think he is going to be active on game days this year because he has that position flex. He will be probably the backup right guard. I don't know. Maybe they'll go Chris Paul, and then we'll see who their 10th offensive lineman is. That is going to be the most fascinating thing for us to do coming up in just a few minutes when we do this updated roster projection with the Braden Daniels news. Who is going to be the 9th and 10th lineman? You have to think Tyler Larson's now making the team. Although I think, like when we did our take command projection this morning, we had him on anyway. So who's the other guy? Stromberg makes that a little easier because you've got a guy already who can play guard, as opposed to being like, geez, how do we get a 4th tackle on here? Which is probably a hint on what direction they could be going. Which brings us actually to our next guy.
#3.
Aaron Montero. He didn't really have a noticeable game to me. But what's happened since is he's been released already, which to me says he's not amongst their final considerations. And there's other guys that I think are probably better candidates for them to be not just practice squad, but 10th lineman. Montero was a guy that's played some tackle for them in the past. He played very well at guard this preseason. But there are other guys who I think stood out to them. And you look at how the depth chart played out in that final game, and you kind of got to wonder what direction they're going to go. But Montero is clearly not going to be it. And again, because he's already been released, to me, like this wave of guys was guys they're not bringing back. Maybe a Milo Eifler, maybe an Aaron Montero to the practice squad, but we shall see.
Number 4.
Quan Martin. Quan had an interesting night. Again, a ball goes over his head for a touchdown, but I do not think that was remotely on Quan Martin. He's playing as an underneath player on that first touchdown, and the ball does go over his head, but there should be another player back behind him in the red zone. Could he have been a little bit deeper, like B. Mitch said on the broadcast? Yeah, but at that point, it's just a slightly harder throw to a still wide open receiver. I think the interesting thing is there's another coverage bust miscommunication on his side of the field. Now, the question that I would have is, was he involved in it? I don't entirely know, but I think the thing that you do notice elsewhere in the game is that dude is a sure tackler, and that is a really important trait for the Buffalo nickel position and a really important trait on this defense where they've had some bad tacklers in years past. So I think between Quan and Cam Curl and Derek Forrest, like, you can eliminate a lot of big plays if your safeties can come up and tackle, and those dudes seem to have a good handle on that. We'll obviously see if they can take the right approach angles and all that kind of stuff, because Quan obviously missed Zay Flowers pretty badly in that Baltimore game. But if he's right up on you in coverage, you are not shaken free of Quan Martin, and we simply love to see that.
Number 5.
Dax Milne didn't have the best night, but he had a better night than Kaz Allen, and Dax has a longer resume. So he has the drop. It's a tough throw. It looks like he's about to get blasted. Not necessarily the best setup from a quarterback to throw you open over the middle in a tight window with two defenders coming together. But ultimately, Dax gators it, and that's not great. But Kaz Allen had 2 easier catches, both of which should have been big plays in terms of whether it was like a big play catch and run. And then the next one is a 3rd and 2 short situation where actually the one before it too, there were 2 drops in a row. Maybe that wasn't a catch and run. He should have had a first down twice. That I feel confident in saying without having watched it 17 times like I would a regular season game. But he's got the ball in his hands, and he drops it, and then he muffs a punt, and he catches another one inside the 6-yard line. And it's the kind of stuff that makes you go, practice squad player. And so Kaz Allen, practice squad. Let him continue to develop, and if he can help you later this season, call him up. So Dax Milne has a couple of catches, has 1 drop. All in all, a fine night, but enough, certainly, I would think, to get on this roster. And then last but not least,
Number 6.
Old Benning Po'otoe. He has been around this team for a couple years now, a guy that plays that 3 technique position. He was okay. I think ultimately Abdullah Anderson probably has a better camp. And if they make a roster move around Big Phil and want to bring in someone else, I think Anderson might wind up getting the call over Po'otoe. But I think Benning had done enough in the Baltimore joints and in the Baltimore game to say if he had had a really good game, he could have pushed Anderson for that spot. Ultimately, I don't think that happens. He might wind up back on the practice squad, though, with Anderson. Just going to depend on how they finagle that. And obviously, that will depend on what they do with the 53, which brings us to the 53. All 53 spots projected over the next half hour. Anthony and I playing the roles of coaches, GMs, pro personnel people, whoever else in the room. Anthony and I, we don't need all the people. Just me and him. Me and you, boy. We're going to do this. We got this. 53-man roster projection. Next on a Monday, it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Secondary wise, I mean, there's a lot of talk about Forbes. He had, some tough one-on-one reps. That were kind of making their way. But
we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is like one-on-ones are designed for the offense to win, and especially the offense to win if they want to take a DB inside towards the middle of the field where there would typically be help. And every single one of everyone being like, oh, he got smoked. It's like, yeah, the dude ran a triple move where the quarterback would have been sacked and then ran to where the help would be.
And also all those are in the red zone, like red zone one-on-ones. So like Yes, like they're. It's just so frustrating when fans get all crazy about it because like red zone, you're gonna run quarters, like red quarters all the time. So there's gonna be a dude standing like right there. Like if you want to run in, like good luck, you're gonna be dead. You know what I'm saying? Like like it just doesn't work that way. Like go run in there, fine. Get smoked by that guy. Get smoked by Foster or whoever or Cam Curl. So it's always super frustrating. And like in those man situations, like in the red zone situations, you'll see the quarterback hold the ball longer because it's like they're running a dig, they're running an out, they're running and if anything, the pressure is more acute in the red zone. So the ball has to be out quicker. So it's like all this stuff. And it's just like, and so what I will say is I thought his reps were competitive. I thought he was in relatively good position. Did he lose a couple reps? Yes. But I don't think that situation is entirely realistic. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980, where if you're watching right now, you can see Anthony, the magical spreadsheet has appeared. Aw, yeah. It is roster construction time. I will tell you, if you are not watching right now, but you're in a place where you can, whether it is with your phone, your tablet, or you're listening as you walk around your house, listening on the free Odyssey app. Perhaps you've told Alexa, hey, Alexa, play the Team 980, something you can do as well. Go over to your smart TV, open the YouTube app, and you can follow along there, and you can see the spreadsheet that I have in front of me right now as we construct the 53. We're going to do offense now, defense at the bottom of the hour. And this is the first roster projection that I've seen that's going to be able to factor in Braden Daniels being out for the season. If you're just joining us or you haven't heard the news, the Commanders' fourth-round rookie tackle has a torn rotator cuff, and the Commanders, amongst a first wave of cuts that included bottom-of-the-roster players we all expected to get cut, was put on IR. He is out for the year. This is injured reserve before the season, which means you cannot come back. There will probably be a player or two that will mention that will get put on short-term IR, maybe even as soon as tomorrow, likely on Wednesday, that allows you to bring back then someone else. So we'll talk through it all. Anthony, are you ready to go?
I am indeed.
All right, so what you're looking at now, the list that's in front of you if you're watching, is the list is just a literal copy and paste of the list that we did a little less than a week ago. Or on August 22nd, we did a roster projection. after the Baltimore game. So we will now adjust based off of that. And I guess my tabs are hidden on the stream, but if you saw, or if you could see them, you'd see the 828 Take Command one that we did this morning. So also recommend listening to that if you want Logan and I's thoughts. So we had 2 quarterbacks, Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett. I don't think we need to change anything there. I do think Jake Fromm deserves a shout out. Like, good job, Jake. You played well. You at least gave us something to think about. But at the end of the day, you need this roster spot way more than a third quarterback. And I think there are enough Jake Fromms around the league that you can get him through to practice squad.
You don't want Jake Fromm as your QB2 is what you're telling me.
Are you trying? You are trying to.
I just asked a simple question. A simple question, Craig. That's all.
No.
For the Jake Fromm supporters out there, you seriously don't want to consider him for your QB2 because he's had a phenomenal preseason.
No, I don't.
Okay.
He hasn't been better than Jacoby Brissett.
That's all I need. This preseason?
Yes.
His numbers are pretty good, Craig.
His numbers are good.
I'm not saying
you want to
I would
adjust
rather
him for
have
who he's playing against.
I'm not saying I would rather have I'm not saying I would rather have Jake over Jacoby, but I'm saying from a numbers wise, I think Fromm's. He's also played more though too, Craig.
He's played way more.
Yeah.
And he's played against. If Jacoby Brissett and Jake Fromm switched places, Jacoby Brissett would look like a Hall of Famer.
You might be right.
Because, like, here's the thing. This team is deep. And, like, let's scope out a second to give a bravo to the Commanders. This is, like, actually an important point, right?
Yeah.
Bravo to the Commanders player personnel department. They did a pretty good job at some pretty important positions to make your third quarterback look good. And, oh, by the way, that Bieniemy guy's also very good. Like, their third offensive line has played well and played better in games than they have in practice. The receivers, like Bryson Tremaine, Mitchell Tinsley, like, these dudes can play. Chris Rodriguez is your running back for part of this. Derek Gore and Jarrett Patterson and Jonathan Williams, like, these dudes are NFL caliber players. Like, you had what would be a bad NFL offense, but like a borderline NFL offense in a lot of places. Like Nolan Laufenberg and Stromberg's playing center for you for part of this. And we talked about Montero playing well along the threes with the offensive line. Like, they got some good players that are going against other teams that are not this deep. So third string versus third string, amazing. Jake Fromm, insulated, looks good, did the job. You put Jacoby Brissett out there, woo. That would not be fair. He had 48 career starts in top 15 in the NFL in real NFL games against real NFL talent last year in Cleveland. Yeah, I'm good.
I didn't mean to get you fired up. I was just asking a question for those that did pose the question, and never read the comments. Just saying.
I'm sure we'll do it again on Wednesday.
We probably will.
And I'm just going to get just as fired up again. All right, running back. Robinson, Gibson, Rodriguez. All due respect to Jarrett Patterson, who was released today. Really good job. Good back. He's gotten better every year, but not at the level of those three. Same for Jonathan Williams, a guy who's 7 years into the league, has had some nice games in actual NFL action. Probably should have been used more last year, especially after J.D. McKissick went down. But at the end of the day, like, Rodriguez has been maybe their best preseason player. I think he leads the NFL in preseason rushing.
He's going crazy.
He's phenomenal. And so I'm excited to see. I think, like, he's earned himself regular season carries. I just don't think there's a reason to carry a fourth. But I think practice squad wise, you use one of your veteran practice squad spots on Williams if you can, because you trust him to step in if you need him, and he's played teams for you in the past. And then you get to Alex Arma, who I think is interesting. Before we get to Arma, any agreement or any disagreement on the backs?
I love the backs.
Okay, all set there. Going with 3, not 4. Arma's a guy that if you need a roster spot, you cut. Because he's a fullback, and you tell him, we're going to sign you again on Thursday, don't go anywhere. We're going to pay you your money. You will not miss a thing. You did not miss a game check. We just need to be able to not have someone get exposed to waivers that other teams are going to sign because we value you as a fullback and no one else in the league does. Sorry, you're the guy. We need to be able to sign Big Phil or keep Big Phil and then put him on IR or someone else, maybe a similar situation that is short-term injured, but you don't want to put on season-ending IR, Armo would be the candidate to do that with. But I don't think they need the spot. I don't think they want to mess around with it. So you just go ahead and keep him on the 53.
Yeah, I think you keep him.
Okay.
Got to.
That gets us to receiver.
Uh-oh.
We probably should have spent less time yelling about Jake Fromm and more time on receiver.
That's
and
why I
offensive line.
apologized earlier about getting you fired up.
Look at you producing the show. All right. McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, Brown.
4. Yep.
Those 4 locked in. Got it. Easy.
Let's get it.
I still think Byron Pringle is locked in as the 5th.
Yes, he is.
He has had a quieter second half of camp, but he just does the right stuff and he plays special teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's valuable there.
Yep.
We had Kaz Allen. You had talked me into Kaz Allen over Dax Milne. That's not happening.
I know. It pains me to see him go.
The thing is, he shouldn't go anywhere. He should just be inactive. Or not inactive. He should just be on practice squad until he learns how to reliably catch punts. And I think by week 6 or week 7, like back half of the season, week 10, you could see Kaz Allen. But here's the thing. Because he had such a poor performance the other night, it actually makes it easier to get him in the practice squad.
Yep.
Where a guy like Milne, I think you're going to have a hard time getting him to practice squad because he's played in the league. And again, Allen, any team could have had Kaz Allen in the draft. Yep. They all passed 7 to whatever number of times of draft picks they had, right? It's just that's a reality. And so, while yes, he's explosive, there's a lot of twitchy athletes that are unpolished and need a lot of work in a lot of camps across the NFL. These are some of the world's best athletes. And so I think getting Kaz Allen to practice squad is going to be pretty easy. And then you have the question of, is it Dax Milne or Mitchell Tinsley or Bryson Tremaine? That gets funky. But I think Milne is the most experienced and he gives you the most on special teams, especially because he's a starter on teams. He's your punt returner. So I actually think while you can make an argument that Mitchell Tinsley may be a little bit more exciting as a receiver and has a similar skill set to Milne and obviously was more productive than Milne in the preseason, and Tremaine gives you something that you don't even have anywhere else with that 6'4" big frame, and he scored a touchdown, I think the special teams just is overwhelmingly pushes things in Dax Milne's direction.
I agree. I think special teams is a spot we're missing right now. It was going to come down to Dax. It was going to come down to Kaz, and that's how I've pretty much like based this last receiver spot on, like who's going to be the teamer, and it's going to have to end up being Dax again because he is reliable, as a catcher back there. And then also, as you always allude to, he can play literally every position on the field. Yep. Maybe not as dynamic as everybody else, but he's still a viable option.
Right, and a guy that can line up in the slot and do some things is not like Terry, Jahan, and Curtis can all line up inside. And Diami's lined up more inside, but a guy who can kind of do the quick, twitchy, shifty inside slot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Milne definitely gives you a different option there than a guy like Tremaine. Tinsley can do that stuff too, but he's a 0 on special teams.
Yeah.
All right. Thomas Bates Turner, tight end, done and done.
Yep.
No arguments. Brandon Dillon, by the way, great game.
I was about to say he looked pretty good.
Really, really impressive. But I don't think that you need to mess around with that. Then you get to the O-line. And now we got something to talk about because Braden Daniels is gone.
And how many numbers?
So we had 10. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in Tyler Larson, which I would have done
him
anyway. Because some of this is projection and like what we would do. Some of this is like feeling out the reporting, and everybody's got him on the team. Ron has been so burned by center the last couple of years. They want to carry 3 centers just in case. And so I get it. I'm not going to argue with that. And with Daniels no longer a part of the equation, I think that actually becomes a little easier. So I would go Leno, Charles, Gates, Cosme, Wiley, your starters, Paul, Lucas, your 2 primary backups, Stromberg, Larson, and I think the next guy up is Trent Scott. And with Daniels gone, you want a 4th tackle. That's the position. So now you're down to Scott, the kid's
Lucas.
62. Well, Lucas is already on.
Oh,
It's like Akimbuale, something like that.
Yeah, AK something.
Yeah, and apologies to him. Like, he hasn't really flashed that much in camp, and all of a sudden he's playing with the twos the other day, and I was like, whoa, where did he come from? But I think Trent Scott, who, by the way, they played not just at right tackle, but at left tackle in the game, and he was okay. He gave up a couple pressures. I think Trent Scott's the next guy up.
So it surprised me a little bit that you kept Larson, but the injury to Braden Daniels does make sense for keeping him. I just wasn't that impressed with him in the last preseason game. But
he's a pro who's done it, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, and it's Alex Akembulu. So apologies to him on not knowing the name immediately. But yeah, man, like, Larson's been there, done that, played in games, been good. He's had a great camp.
Yeah,
I think he was fine in the game. Like, is what it is. But I think, like, Jared Jones-Smith at guard, who's got a little tackle flex, like, he's interesting. Obviously, Mason Brooks, Nolan Laufenberg has been very, very good in camp, and he's a large man who can play some center and can play some guard. But at the end of the day, I think you need another tackle, and I just think Trent Scott's the obvious next guy up.
Yeah.
All right, so that leaves us with 25 on offense. That means we got 25 on defense plus the 3 specialists. And so with the Braden Daniels news, all we've done is wind up moving our O-line around. But does it affect anything on defense, and did the final game affect anything on defense? Find out next when we continue our roster projection here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We close out every day with real things real people said into real microphones coming up in just a little bit. Tomorrow on the show, 5 o'clock, our buddy Michael Phillips will join. Excited for that. Sam 48 Wednesday, Nikki Javala Friday. So all of your favorites who cover the team going to be on this here radio program later this week. Continuing now with our 53-player roster projection. We're done with the offense. Let's get to the defense, Anthony. This is the most juiced position on the team, but I actually don't think this is that hard. Defensive line, I think they keep 11. They go one short at linebacker, and it's really not that big of a deal. I think Chase Young, John Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat, obvious. And then I think James Smith-Williams, Casey Tuhill, and F.A. Obata are obvious. I think Phil Mathis is obvious, although you might wind up IRing him, and then you can play around if you want to bring back a fifth linebacker, for instance, for special teams purposes. And then the 2 draft picks, KJ Henry, Andre Jones Jr., they're on. Jones did slow a little bit in the last week of camp, a little less consistent, and Henry, I thought, got better. But you keep both of them. They're draft picks. They both got upside. You took them for a reason, and you're at a position where all those other guys that I mentioned, every single defensive end above them on the depth chart is in a contract year. So you're obviously not going to bring all of them back because they're going to be too expensive. It's not just all in a contract year, but all of them but Obata are coming off their rookie deals. And then John Ridgeway is the 11th guy. I think he was good enough for you last year that even though he wasn't quite as good maybe as an Abdullah Anderson this preseason, he's working his way back from injury. He had a torn pec late in the year. He's had a bit of a back thing that he's been working through. And he's shown enough progress to say it's worth the continuity for the 5th-round pick that the Cowboys cut last year at this time and wound up being an enormous player for Washington on the field last season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Craig. And keeping all 11 of these guys, it's going to just be tough to get all of them on the field, though.
So that's where what they did, well, a couple things. One, they're going to rotate Obata and Smith-Williams, and I believe Chase in on 3rd downs as pass rushers. So you're going to be able to play Allen and Payne as much as possible on 1st and 2nd down. And while those guys are obviously tremendous pass rushers, if you want to find a place to give one of them a blow, not worry about losing anything against the run because it's 3rd down. We're talking about like 3rd and 8 passing situations, 3rd and 8 plus passing situations, maybe even 3rd and 6 plus passing situations. Get a James Smith-Williams who's got a little bit more quickness as a pass rusher, but still a strong bull from the inside. Moves the pocket well. Same thing for F.A. Obata. A little bit, I would say, different rusher than James for sure, but effective and has shown that he can do that in the past. And they messed around with it with Chase as well at that 3 technique. So you can get them on the field that way. It's also a position that rotates a lot. And here's the other part before I get to what was actually going to be my second point in terms of where they get on the field. Do we really think Chase Young's going to play 17 games?
I think so.
This dude got a stinger that Ron seemed to say was going to be 3 to 4 days. Yeah, and we are a couple weeks later, and he hasn't been back on the field. We know he wants a new contract. He's going to be super careful, which I'm not begrudging him, but he's going to be super careful. And we know he was super careful with his knee. And again, when he came back, it was clear that, he wasn't himself yet. So that is what it is. But Chase has taken a while to get back from injuries, and he, hasn't been healthy a lot. Most of it's one major knee injury. But I don't know. I thought Ron was super weird about Chase, and not that he's going to get cut or anything.
Yeah.
But if Chase's doctor's appointment went fine on Friday or whenever it was, when Nikki asked him after the game, how's Chase, he wouldn't say, we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about the game. He'd just be like, it was fine. He should be back, good to go in practice next week. He didn't. It's not what he said.
Yeah.
So I think keeping these guys becomes even more important because they have the experience. And where are they going to get on the field? When Chase Young is off it. And I hope that's not the case. I hope Chase is healthy and balls out. But if you're Rivera and Del Rio and Scanina and Ryan Kerrigan, the defensive line group, you better be prepared.
How much of the Cinco package do you think will be utilized, though? Because you're talking about lining Chase Young up in the 3-tech. You're talking about lining, F.A. up in the 3-tech. If we're going 4-down linemen, I want, Deron, I want John, I want
For sure.
Chase and Montez. But you're talking about lining these people up in the 3-techs and, coming in. So
But you know how much NFL linemen rotate.
I know. But we've also seen times where John has played 90% of the plays. We've seen all these.
And how'd that go at the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it is a toll on the body.
It's a
but-
huge toll. And, those guys have been hurt when they've done that stuff.
Yeah.
So let's not. That's what I would say is of course you want those guys out there, but this ain't Madden. You can't turn injuries and fatigue off. Fatigue is real. And they're going to, hopefully the offense is going to help them. And look, I mean, you got plenty of guys that don't play that much.
Yeah.
On a 53-man roster. I'm not concerned. And the thing is, it's not like they're taking away from guys elsewhere who would be playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the position you're overloaded at. Yep. But here's the other thing. Logan and I talked about this, I think, and he had a great perspective because he had personal experience here. They're so good on teams at the DB spot and so deep there with Holmes, Butler, and Reeves. And I would say the defensive linemen that we're talking about down the roster are better than average defensive linemen on teams. That they're the concern you have about not keeping an extra tight end or an extra linebacker to play teams, it's mitigated with this group. And Logan said in his personal experience, he was a bad special teams player for certain responsibilities, like punt coverage. Didn't matter because they had such good players elsewhere on the roster. They had two great gunners. And then they had Mike Sellers and Lorenzo Alexander, who were as good as you get as bigger bodies. And they go down and make 90% of the tackles. And so Logan just had to protect, make sure the punt didn't get blocked, and lollygag down the field. Not lollygag. He was busting his butt because he's Logan Paulson. He played hard. But run as fast as he could down the field and watch Lorenzo make a tackle. Or watch the gunner, Anthony Armstrong or whoever it was, make the tackle. And because Holmes and Reeves and Butler are so sensational, and because James Smith-Williams gets down the field and Tuhill gets down the field and Andre Jones Jr. is going to get down the field probably faster than those two. KJ Henry's played some teams before. You've got really agile D linemen at the end that are fighting for these spots that are actually as good as linebackers pretty much as special teams players. So there's no real hit on the roster. What would hurt is if you had to cut one of these guys who is not just a borderline NFL player. These guys are F.A., James, and Casey are borderline NFL starters. Cutting them would be stupid. I'm going to be really clear on that. Cutting them, any of the three of them, would be a dumb decision. Don't do that. You do not need to. So the good news is I don't think they're going to, and I don't think they need the roster spot elsewhere. But people shouldn't get freaked out by the 11 D linemen or the fact that, it's going to be hard to rotate all of them every week.
Yeah.
All right, which leads us to linebacker. Pretty straightforward. They already cut Milo Eifler today. Mm-hmm. So you got Jamin, Barton, Mayo, Hudson. I think Dejon Harris is a guy that should get mentioned because if they IR Big Phil and they don't want to bring up Abdullah Anderson as a backup or Benning Patoe, if either one of those guys doesn't get to the practice squad or they don't want to elevate to have that extra depth inside, I think Dejon Harris could be the next man up. I also think that if you really want him for special teams, then you could do the Alex Arma thing. But by the way, Arma also plays teams. So I think it's a little bit cut your nose off to spite your face kind of deal because Arma's more valuable playing fullback than Scooter Harris is to special teams as a fifth linebacker who's not going to see the field on defense. And then this is where, that 11 became really easy because there's no one that really made a case to keep 11 DBs. It's pretty easy to do the DBs. It's Forbes, it's St. Juice, it's Fuller, it's Holmes, it's Danny Johnson at corner, and then Quan Martin is the hybrid player, Derek Forrest, Cam Curl, Percy Butler, and Jeremy Reeves. It's it. That's it. It's simple. It's done. There is no Rashad Wildgoose did not have a good enough camp. Whiteside was not consistent enough. Jace Whitaker, nice pick the other day, but like that's kind of the first play he's made, or the first big play he's made all of camp, all preseason. So I think there's a couple really, really nice practice squad candidates, including all those guys I just mentioned, Terrell Burgess and others, Smith, the safety, Kendall Smith, out of Illinois. But at the end of the day, like if Wild Goose had been as good as he was the first week of camp and played really well outside as well, and not just in the nickel, then you have a numbers game issue. But you don't. There's 10 DVs that belong on the team for 10 spots, and so you move forward, and there's your 25 on defense.
I like it, man. I'm still a little weary about Danny Johnson. Haven't really heard about the latest on, his recovery.
He was moving around on the side fields and stuff last week, so
Okay.
I think he's going to be fine.
Okay.
Relatively quickly. And if he's inactive for the first game, like,
who cares?
No big deal.
Yeah.
And then you got Tress, Joey, and Cameron Cheeseman.
You
That's your
sure
53.
Tress is going to make it?
Wow, you made the same joke as Logan in Take Command.
I know. I was listening earlier.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he actually does pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. Boys and girls. People of all kinds.
Yes.
Yes. Good job, Anthony. Good job. So yeah, that's our 53. I actually don't think this is that hard. It's like,
do you think we're going to be off by 1 or 2 tomorrow? If it's not that hard, we should ace it.
I think this is the list.
Okay.
Like, unless there's another injury or something, I'll say this. I don't think there's any, like, if they wind up doing the Alex Arma Funkarooski for Dejon Harris, or they keep 11-0 linemen, like, that would be, we're off by 1, but it wouldn't be surprising. If we're off by more than that, and, like, there's something that we haven't mentioned that happens, I'd be stunned. Stunned.
Okay. So we should not be off by more than 1.
Shouldn't be.
All right.
Shouldn't be.
I'm looking forward to it, Craig.
Guess we'll find out. 4 o'clock tomorrow, start of the show. We got to know by then. We'll see if we know beforehand. I think we probably will. Keep your eye on your favorite beat reporter's Twitter feed all day. That's how that goes. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Here's what's trending.
It's the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. If you missed any parts of the show, the best of it goes on YouTube, youtube.com/@Craig Hoffman. You'll also find pieces of Take Command there. And then we got a whole bunch of other stuff that should be happening later this week on the digital side of things. So I know I keep hinting at that. We're just waiting on a few I's to be dotted, T's to be crossed. So that's why you keep staying tuned, because eventually that stuff does come to fruition. All right, Anthony, any other housekeeping that we need to do before we get up on out of here with Real Things Real People Said into real microphones?
No.
Okay. Well, then it's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, it is U.S. Open week, and that is very exciting for those of us that are tennis fans. By the way, something we didn't mention and what else happened this weekend, congrats on the Mystics for beating the league-leading Aces. A bit of a schedule loss for the Aces, though. That was a they played 4 and 8 all on the road, Ant. That's
a
tough
doozy.
sledding. Did you see Asia Wilson's tweet, by the way? So funny. She goes, we've been on the road so much I can't even remember what hotel room I'm in. And then she quote tweeted herself and she goes, and your girl's dyslexic, so it's like a game within a game.
Oh,
that's tough.
brutal.
That's tough sledding. The reason the Mystics Aces thing was sparked by tennis is we went to the game on Saturday and I saw our boy Wes Hall and we were talking tennis and he's like, yo, we got I was like, I didn't know you played. He's like, yeah, we play all the time. So I think he and I are going to go hit some tennis balls this week, and I'm pretty pumped about it.
Oh, are you nice?
I mean, I was when I was 8.
Okay. When you were 8?
Yeah, I haven't touched a racket in a while.
Good
last
gracious.
time I played was Rachel and I just went to hit around. It's a good time. Anyway, there's all kinds of fun stuff that happens U.S. Open week. You get all kinds of exhibitions and stuff leading into the actual tournament, which started today, including this from Coco Gauff, who is on fire right now and definitely a great chance for an American to win, clowning fellow American and DC native Frances Tiafoe.
Try to get me to get to 130, but okay. I don't know, guys. I don't think I have the shoulders for that. I think 128 might be it.
Well, listen, you never know.
Faster than this guy, though, for sure.
Faster than Frances Tiafoe.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Look at his serve.
That's the goal for Coco.
Yeah.
Yikes, man. Throwing shade on Tiafoe's serve. Got a nice serve.
Nah, I mean, you can only hope and dream, you know.
How fast do you think you could serve a tennis ball? I literally have no idea.
I don't have the show. You see how little my shoulders are? I got some biceps, but the shoulders, not really there. Yeah.
Hey, triceps. That's part of it.
Oh, it's a tricep. Oh, I don't know.
Part of it. And you got the flick of the wrist.
Oh,
actually, there's probably tennis people that are like, do not flick your wrist. Yeah. Anyway, tomorrow, Paul George's impression of Charles Barkley.
Can Eric Bieniemy on